today we will discuss the topic of financial management, that is financial management decisions. As we already discussed in the introductory part, that finance is lifeblood of any business. So it is a challenging task for every finance manager to make optimal utilization of resources. As we already studied the various approaches of financial management, that is modern approach as well traditional approach, and as per the modern approach, the real challenge is to utilization of the financial resources to the core or maximization of the wealth of the shareholders. So, in case of or in the process of financial management, a finance manager has to take various types of decisions, or rather we can say he has to adopt various types of tools, and all that can be categorized in three broad categories, that is financing, investing, and dividend policy. So no doubt these are the three decisions seeming to be very simple. Rather, these are the core aspect of financial management. That starts from the financing process and ends with the dividend policy. So these decisions are not oscillation to each other, rather they are interconnected to each other. So firstly we discuss with the financing. As we know, there is no activity in this world which can be possible without finance. So for any type of venture, whether it's business or non-business, we need finance. And the first question arises, what amount is required? And from which sources we have to acquire that amount of funds. So that is the part of financial planning. So in financing decision, the first step we take, that is financial planning. After the determination of the amount which is required for the you can so any business expansion or the establishment of new business, that is financial planning, then the next problem arises, what would be the various sources of finance? So there are so many sources of finance, as we are already studied that there are broadly on three types of sources of finance, that is long term, then medium term, and short term. And every businessman designed his financing policy according to requirements, whether it's a long term, medium term, as well as short term. So the selection of or availability of sources of finance is again affected by its cost as well as the decision regarding the proportion. So in financing, where we start with the determination of amount of finance required, and after that we look after the various sources of finance available. Naturally, again we need what amount of the cost which is to be required to pay the financial resources. So that is technically known as cost of capital. That's again another important tool in the financial management. And the various sources of finance has its own various types of cost of capital, because depending on the time availability as well as the market conditions. So all the financing requirements can't be fulfilled from a single source. It is a blend of long-term sources of finance, medium-term sources of finance, as well as short-term sources of finance. So it means in financing decision we have broadly three strategies or tools. Number one, financial planning. Number two, sources of finance. Then cost of capital and capital structure. So these are the four parameters which have to be discussed in the case of financing decision. So after taking financing decision, the next part, where these funds to be invested, because when we have started the financial planning, we have in mind, we have a plan to invest somewhere. So in investment decision, broadly we discuss or we decide the amount which we required to be invest. So investment can be of two types or in two avenues. One is the long-term investment and another is the short-term investment. So in long-term investment, we know the time span is larger. Naturally, we require large amount of funds, and it involves great amount of risk. So if the amount is large, the time period is large, naturally we have to take extra caution while taking such a decision. And on the other hand, for carrying out the day-to-day operations, we require certain working capital that is required to meet out the day-to-day expenses. So in investment decision, we have to take broadly two types of decisions. That is, one is the long-term investment and second is the short-term investment. And for taking long-term investment, we have the technique of capital budgeting, where we decide whether the amount to be invested, in which project we have to select the amount so we can get the maximum amount of return. So investment decision, for the long-term investment, we have use capital budgeting technique. Whereas for the short-term purpose, that is, we have working capital, we have the working capital management. And basically is working capital, we simply define current assets minus current liabilities, which is also essential. So by adopting these two strategies, a finance manager makes the investment decisions. So financing, we have acquired the funds, now we have invested the funds. It means first we have acquired the funds, then we utilize the fund. That is the basic purpose of financial management that we have studied in the modern approach: acquisition of funds as well as the utilization of funds. But investment in the business is primarily motivated by the rate of return, means the profits. So, but in case of a company, what we are talking about in the context of financial management, that is particularly available or particularly applicable in the case of joint stock company or large scale organizations, we need certain strategies so to optimize our return on the investment. Why it is so important, particularly in the company? See, because in company the large amount is invested by the general public in the form of shares, which are known as shareholders. And what they demand? They demand the return, and the company distribute the amount of profit, that is known as dividend. So the third part in the financial management decision is the dividend policy. That is very, very important from the company point of view, as it directly fulfills the objective of financial management, that is wealth maximization of shareholders. So whenever we take the decision, we start with the financing, and no doubt it's the third, but it is not the last decision of the finance manager. Rather, these are complementary to each other, and these are the continuous or interrelated to each other. Means financing decision would affect the investment decision, and investment decision would affect the dividend decision, and in you can say at the end the dividend decision ultimately affect your you can say financing decision. It means these are interrelated and complementary to each other. So no doubt of finance manager is looking for getting maximum returns, but in the present scenario, due to the large scale of competition, changing market scenario or the other factors, it is a very, very challenging task for a finance manager to take appropriate steps so that there would be a good blend of financing, investment and dividend. So the success of any finance manager would depend upon the efficiency, the effectiveness with that it takes the decision whether it is a financing, whether it is a investing, and that whether it is a dividend. And one thing is more important, or the most important part of this topic, is that once you would have taken the decision, that is not the permanent, since the business scenario is quite dynamic, whether it is economic, whether it is a political, and the finance manager has to review, you can say on the basis of monthly or half yearly or even the shorter period of time, as per the market or economic conditions, to review the decisions, so that ultimate purpose is of financial management is to maximize the value of the firm. So these three decisions would affect whether the company is fulfilling the objective of wealth maximization, as well as whether these decisions are fulfilling the objectives of maximizing value of the firm. So when we see the whole syllabus of financial management, and the whole syllabus is confined into these 7 or 8 strategy or tools, like I repeat, in financing we have talked about 4 strategy or tools. One is the financial planning, sources of finance, cost of capital, and capital structure. So these are 4. And in the investment part, we have discussed about 2 types of investment decision, long term and short term. For long term we have capital budgeting, and for the short term or mid term we have the working capital management. Again, in working capital management we have to manage 3 parts, that is cash, debtors, and bill receivables. And last we have the dividend policy. So these tools or strategies composite the syllabus, whatever in your curriculum. That basically this is the overall structure of the financial management, and all the syllabus, whether you have studied in the BCom or in the MCom, basically these are the principles, these are the tools, these are the strategies to which are available for a finance manager to achieve the objectives of financial management, that is again wealth maximization and value of the firm. So I hope with this we will able to understand the overview regarding the financial management decisions. So in the next discussion we will discuss each and every strategy one by one in detail, to know about the what are the core aspects and what are the practical aspects to deal with each and every strategy to achieve the objectives. Thank you very much.